Today we're starting with Paul's letter to the Galatians, and this letter is known as the Magna Carta of Christian liberty because in it Paul is writing about the freedom we have in Christ as he addresses the issue of whether Gentiles have to first become Jews before they can become Christians, which is something that the early church in Acts chapter 15 had made clear that no, that was not in fact the case. But there were people who both believed in Jesus and who wanted to hold on to their Judaic roots, who were saying somebody had to be a Jew first in order to become a Christian. And the argument is so heartfelt and impassioned, shall we say, that of all the letters that Paul writes in the New Testament, this is the only one in which he dispenses with his customary prayer of thanksgiving and commendation to the people, and he just basically launches full scale into a very impassioned argument. And in chapter 1 in verse 10, as part of this opening salvo, he says, "Am I now seeking human approval or God's approval? Or am I trying to please people? If I were still pleasing people, I would not be a servant of Christ." This verse really speaks to me as a pastor and as someone who preaches on a regular basis. Because one of the real challenges that faces all of us who stand in a pulpit and preach week in, week out, month out, is we want to please people. We want people to be happy. We want people to like us. We want people to hear what we have to say. And yet there is an extent to which that can become a trap. And as Paul is asserting here to the church, the role of God's messenger is not to seek human approval. It's not to do what we do so that people think we're nice or wonderful or good communicators. We are here as God's messengers. We are to please God, and we are to seek God's approval rather than that of people. From time to time, that leads to some painful conversations. Sometimes what I feel led to say from my prayer life, my reading of the Bible, my listening to the Spirit is not something that someone else wants to hear. And from time to time, people even leave our church and depart and go to another church because of something that I've said or another pastor has said from the pulpit. And that's always sad, but I know it's also part of life. In your own life, being a people pleaser can be a trap because it means we're giving our happiness, our contentment, our peace, our joy, we're giving that into the hands of another person. And we don't want to do that. It's much healthier and it's much wiser, whether one's a preacher or just a regular person, to be seeking God's approval rather than pleasing people. Because that way our peace, our contentment, our sense of self is rooted in God and our relationship with God, and not with the response of people who can be, from time to time, quite fickle.